Joining us now is John Hinderaker, President of the Centre of the American Experiment, and Josh Hammer, Senior Editor-at-Large at Newsweek. Thank you both for joining us. I really appreciate it, and Happy New Year to you both. Let's start with the news out of Davos, with President Trump, first of all, ruling out force to take Greenland, and now he says that a framework of a future deal has been reached with NATO over Greenland. Look, he certainly moves quickly. John, is it the art of the deal? What do you make of this?
Well, first of all, Gabriella, there was never any possibility of our invading Greenland, just like there was never any possibility of our annexing Canada. I don't know why Trump likes to talk that way sometimes, but that was not in the cards. On the other hand, it's always been clear that Denmark and Greenland are happy to let us have whatever we need in terms of bases and armaments in Greenland. They don't want Russian missiles passing overhead any more than we do. So this is all going to get worked out. I think at the end of the day, this is not going to be a big problem to solve.
Josh, what are your thoughts? We also heard today from NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte saying that Donald Trump is right, and so are other world leaders, that more needs to be done to protect the Arctic. And I also want to get your thoughts on Donald Trump unleashing on Europe again when it comes to energy and immigration.
Yeah, there's a lot to bash Europe with these days, Gabriella. I mean, this goes all the way back, at least as far as J.D. Vance's speech at the Munich Security Forum in Germany last February, and in the very first weeks of this administration. So this administration is definitely not afraid to yuck it up with Europe and to criticize them pretty harshly when need be. By the way, they're also perfectly happy to make nice with Europe when it's suitable for the American national interest as well. I think back to the summit at the White House in August when they were trying to kind of orchestrate this Zelensky-Putin peace deal. But in any event there, look, I'm not sure that ideal really has been reached. I take Donald Trump seriously, but not literally here in this announcement on his Truth Social post. I think that there's probably been some positive discussions there. My best guess, Donald Trump pays very close attention to the stock market. He's known for watching the stocks very, very closely. I think that he was probably spooked a little bit by the mini crash that happened after the threat of tariffs against Denmark and perhaps the UK, France, various other Western European countries there. So he's probably trying to in the very short term stop the economic bleeding. I don't think he's giving up at all, frankly, when it comes to this American desire to acquire Greenland. A campaign, by the way, that I find myself fully supportive of. There's actually a very long history of American statesmen expressing interest in actually making deals to acquire Greenland. William Seward, Abraham Lincoln's Secretary of State, explored it back in 1867, 2 years after Lincoln's assassination. Harry Truman made a formal offer of $100 million in 1946 at the very beginning of the Cold War because he saw it as a very strategic island when it comes to deterring Russian and, by extension, Chinese incursion into the Western Hemisphere. So especially given this resurgent Trumpian interest in the Monroe Doctrine, this notion of Western Hemispheric dominance, that I think it plays really nicely into that. So I would definitely not discount the possibility that Donald Trump actually ends up getting Greenland. In fact, I think that there's a real chance, frankly, before this term is up, that you could see potentially, I'm not calling it, but as in potentially, you could see Greenland as the next Guam, Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands, some sort of territorial acquisition.
John, what do you make of that?
Well, I don't disagree. It's certainly possible. I guess my point is we don't really need that. We're going to get all the security cooperation that we want from Denmark and Greenland. And if in addition to that, we want Greenland to be a territory, frankly, we can buy it. There's only about 55,000 people living in Greenland. And I think it would be within our means to acquire Greenland if that's what we really want to do. But I think the important thing is that we have the ability to do what we need to do there in terms of national and international security.
Okay, let's turn to Minnesota. And of course, we've been seeing the anti-ICE riots. Anti-ICE protesters have been taken to the streets and then over the weekend storming a church. Vice President J.D. Vance is reportedly going to be visiting Minnesota on Thursday, but this is what Donald Trump had to say about the protests against ICE.
Screaming, shame, shame. This is not people that are like living in Minnesota. These are professional, paid people. They're like actors. I mean, I watched the guy last night in the church. And not just Don Lemon. Don Lemon's a loser. But I watched the guy last night in the church. This guy's a professional guy, and he actually admits to it. He gets paid a lot of money to go and cause trouble. And you see that. What they don't see is that ICE gets rid of murderers, drug dealers, Hinderaker, I mean, the worst gang in the world, anywhere in the world, MS-13, 20. But these are the worst gangs, and they get rid of them. They take them out.
John, you're in Minnesota. Can you talk to us about what it's been like on the ground?
Well, it's been terrible, Gabriella. There have been constant conflicts between these so-called protesters who are actively interfering with ICE, trying to prevent them from being able to carry out their law enforcement function, and the ICE people who are getting no help at all from local law enforcement, no crowd control, no help at all. And meanwhile, our elected officials, starting with Governor Tim Walz, are encouraging and inciting these rioters to interfere with the enforcement of federal law, which of course is a crime. And so it's really a very tough situation here on the ground. And it was made worse, of course, by the incident in which Renee Good got shot as she was driving into an ACE agent.
Josh, I want to get your thoughts on this and also what role the media is playing. It's been revealed that ABC, NBC and CBS delivered 93% negative coverage on ICE. This is after the fatal shooting of Renee Good and according to a study from the Media Research Centre, but 93% negative coverage. I mean, that has to have such a big impact.
You know, it has a tremendous impact, Gabriella. I think the silver lining, though, is that it's not as tremendous an impact as it would have been as recently as just 10, 15 years ago. I mean, the Trump administration, to their great credit, I mean, back before there was the Trump administration, there was the Trump-Vance campaign, they intuited quite presciently that the American media ecosystem today is not necessarily dominated by the big three networks of ABC, NBC, and CBS. In fact, if you look at the airtime that the Trump-Vance campaign gave to top 100, top 500 podcasts, YouTube shows, alternative media, digital media, they totally blew the Harris-Walz campaign out of the water. And Caroline Levitt, the press secretary, actually now has this whole alternative new media section in the press conferences there. So they're very astute and very tuned into that. Having said that, obviously, I mean, that the number is not particularly helpful. You know, these analogies to ICE are just so utterly astounding to me. I mean, putting on my legal cap as a lawyer here, ICE is just a law enforcement agency. It is just a federal law enforcement agency that is tasked with enforcing a specific body of federal law, that being immigration law. I mean, to that extent, though, it's really no different than the FBI. I mean, the FBI is also a federal law enforcement agency. There's any number of federal law enforcement agencies there. But you know, when I hear these elected Democrats, Keith Ellison, the Attorney General of Minnesota, is a very good example. I was watching his press conference maybe about a week and a half ago where he was kind of summarizing his new lawsuits that the state of Minnesota and Jacob Frey, the mayor of Minneapolis, they're suing DHS, they're suing ICE for ICE presence there. And his rhetoric was just totally striking to me, Gabrielle. He was saying it is our states' rights. It is our 10th Amendment issue. The federal government cannot belong here. And I found myself thinking, wow, I mean, do that in a thick Southern accent, like the states' rights, the federal government does not belong here. I mean, we're talking about the ghost of John C. Calhoun. We're talking about this. We're talking about the ghost of the Confederacy. And frankly, the ghost of the Confederacy lives on. I mean, back then it was a Democrat insurrection that led to the Civil War. And frankly, these so-called sanctuary cities are actually just neo-Confederate bastion state. The solution back then, well, God willing, won't take actual conflict, but the legal solution is to establish the supremacy of federal law, which is already established part of Article 6 of the Constitution there. And thankfully, I think we have a commander-in-chief who understands that very important norm.
Oh, absolutely. Staying in Minnesota, Donald Trump has slammed Ilhan Omar, weighing into the mounting questions over her net worth. Of course, her net worth reportedly jumped $30 million pretty quickly. This is what Donald Trump had to say.
Australia is not even a country. They don't have anything that resembles a country. And if it is a country, it's considered just about the worst in the world. They come here and they become rich and they don't have a job. I was told that Ilhan Omar is worth $30 million. She never had a job. She's a crooked congressman.
John, what's your take on all of this?
Well, first of all, by her own filings, her own reports, Ilhan Omar has gone in a year from having a net worth of essentially zero to having a net worth of $30 million. Now, that is not easy to do. And it's especially not easy to do when her husband doesn't seem to have any active or successful businesses that might explain it. And so it obviously raises questions. And another thing that is calling out for investigation is that it was Ilhan Omar who introduced the free food legislation that enabled the Feeding Our Future fraud, the Feeding Our Future scandal, which adds up now to about $500 million and was centered in the Somalian community. So a lot of people are wondering whether some of that $500 million might have wound up with Ilhan Omar. I have no idea whether that's the case or not, but certainly her sudden wealth is worth looking into.
Oh, of course. Now, I want to turn to Iran because, of course, over the past few weeks, we have just seen extraordinary scenes of courage from the people of Iran and also so much devastation. I mean, the scale of the violence deployed by Iran's security forces against protesters has been staggering. Thousands of people have been killed since demonstrations began, many others detained or tortured. Josh, what are your thoughts on where to from here? What do you expect will happen in the future? Do you think it's inevitable that the regime will fall?
Well, the first thing to note is, I mean, just the staggering degree of just human carnage. I mean, we don't know the exact number of deaths, but at this point, Iranian state television, I mean, so that's the lowest possible estimate. They're now saying about 3.5 to 4,000. I mean, most estimates now have it at least 20, 25,000, possibly more than that. And that's horrific. I mean, you're talking here about a government murdering its own people, for having the temerity, for having the chutzpah to say that actually our economy is terrible. There is a water drought. Our currency is losing value relative to the dollar and other Western currencies there. We just want to drink water. We want to eat food. We want to not starve. Stop spending money on these foreign terrorist organizations. Stop funding Hezbollah in Lebanon. Stop funding the Houthis in Yemen and on and on and on there. This particular uprising was really sparked not by concerns about the hijab or anything. That was a 2022 protest. This was really an economic protest. And a regime that murders potentially upwards of 25, God knows how many, 30, who knows how many thousands of its own citizens because of a desire to want the government to provide for their economic needs. It's just staggering about the degree of evil. Now, is the regime going to fall? Look, they've been around now for over 4.5 decades. They took power in the revolution in 1979. They have been through these sorts of uprisings before. This is arguably the most severe uprising that they faced in their 4.5 decades, at least going back to 2009, the so-called Green Revolution that Barack Obama did very little, if anything, to support at the time. I will say, Gabriella, I think that President Trump has a red line to fulfill at this point there. I'm not a big fan of red lines. My foreign policy is very much in accord with President Teddy Roosevelt, who famously said, speak softly and carry a big stick. That's my preference. But Donald Trump drew a red line pretty clearly, actually, multiple times on Truth Social. He said, keep on going. Help is on the way. We will not tolerate the regime slaughtering its own citizens. Well, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but that red line has been crossed. It's been eviscerated, trampled over. And the question now, ultimately, is that red line going to be enforced? And Trump is now getting a lot of advice. He's getting a lot of possible plans presented, tossed his way from his close military advisors, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, et cetera, et cetera. We'll see what he does there. And I don't pretend to know exactly what some sort of response would look like there. But at this point, if for American deterrence, if nothing else, to say nothing of trying to inflict damage on this most cancerous of regimes there, I think some sort of American response really is required.
John, what do you make of that? Do you think that Donald Trump should take action?
I agree with absolutely everything that Josh just said. I think that this regime is horrible. It's evil. It has long overstayed its welcome. But history tells us that the worst tyrannical regimes often survive longer than you ever think that they could. And if they're willing to gun down citizens in the street, they can stay in power for a long time. So I hope that the administration finds an effective way to get its thumb on the scale on behalf of the people of Iran and help to bring about the destruction of the mullah's regime.
Absolutely. Look, before I let you go, I just want to bring you President Trump's comments on Marco Rubio. He said that Marco Rubio will be going down as the greatest Secretary of State in United States history. Let's listen.
That the Democrats probably wish they didn't do that. And Marco has been fantastic. Marco, stand up, please. You have done a great job as Secretary of State. He's going to go down as the best Secretary of State. And Scott, and we have Susie, who's the first female Chief of Staff
and she's the best chief of staff, too.
We've been seeing a lot of Marco Rubio on our screens, and you can really see how much confidence Donald Trump has in him. Josh, what's your assessment of Marco Rubio?
I think Marco Rubio has had a historic first year as Secretary of State. I mean, the sheer number of peace deals that America has orchestrated across the world, everywhere from Thailand and Cambodia to India and Pakistan to Rwanda and the Congo, Armenia and Azerbaijan, the Middle East. I mean, basically everywhere they go, they're getting more peace deals. And then you kind of couple that with some of these staggering operations. I mean, the Nicolas Maduro operation, which everyone recognizes was the brainchild of Marco Rubio, this was staggering. I mean, this was an incredible reassertion of American Western Hemispheric dominance. So I think Marco Rubio is absolutely soaring right now. I mean, he's already the first man to serve as both Secretary of State and National Security Advisor since Henry Kissinger famously served both those roles there. Look, if I were a betting man, which I'm really not, but if I were a betting man, I would be long on Marco Rubio for the 2028 Republican presidential nomination. I'm not predicting that. I think J.D. Vance is still the favorite right now. But it seems to me that Vice President Vance is somewhat stagnating at a moment where Marco Rubio is profoundly ascendant. And don't discount the possibility that maybe, just maybe, Trump could actually potentially endorse Rubio. I mean, most recently, he's been talking about J.D. as his anointed successor. But, I mean, you said it, Gabriella. Trump clearly loves Marco Rubio and clearly has a ton of trust in this guy there. So we'll see. It could get very interesting.
Look, I wouldn't be surprised if he endorsed Marco Rubio either. John, what do you think?
Well, I think we have to wait until Trump's term is over and let a little time go by to see what the cumulative effect of all these foreign policies turns out to be. We'll leave that to the historians, but I agree that Marco Rubio is doing a terrific job. I know Marco a little. I've worked with him. I think he is extraordinarily competent and a genuinely good guy. Everyone who knows Marco likes him, and I think he does a great job of representing our country.
John Hinderaker, President of the Center of the American Experiment, and Josh Hammer, Senior Editor at Large at Newsweek. Thank you both so much for joining us.
Thank you, Gabrielle.